and we're looking to understand who FZY are, why we operate, what we're doing, how we do it, when and where we come from. So hopefully it'll give you a bit of an understanding, especially as our madrachim, mainly our madrachim, but also members, going to lead on summer programs or leading throughout the year. It's really important to understand the full aspect of what FZY are, of who FZY are and what we have to offer. Let me go on big screen.
So we thought we'd start with who. It's obviously we're FZY, and we thought we'd go through a few key points in history that will sort of allow us to get a good basis of understanding of where FZY has come from. So the first one you need to know is 1910, which is when FZY was originally formed, following like early Zionist congresses and basically from a group of university students who wanted their own platform. And FZY is the oldest Zionist youth movement in the UK, but it wasn't until 1935 that we took the name the Federation of Zionist Youth.
During the Second World War, a lot of our members went to serve in the army, and it meant that resources were a bit scarce, programs didn't happen as much, but the office, the central office, did manage to stay in touch with many people. During the years leading up to 1948, there was a lot of talk about Palestine in the media, there was a lot of conversation, and FZY activities flourished all over the country, especially in the sort of smaller communities, the provincial societies around the country. And then in 1948, when Israel's declared independence, there left a question in the movement about whether FZY had achieved its aims or not. So as a Zionist youth movement, FZY sought the creation of a Jewish homeland and really wanted the establishment of Israel. And when this happened in 1948, many members went to make Aliyah. And for those that didn't, the purpose of the movement came into question.
Can I just ask a question? Is that appropriate or not?
Josh. Yeah, of course.
No, I just think I'm wondering as well then, so like in that first bit, that like 1910 through until 1948, do you know what kind of activities FZY was engaging in?
Yeah, so especially, well, it's mainly university student activities. So all of the programs that FZY ran and the groups that we had were from 18 upwards. So there was nothing really in terms of this Chanech Madrach relationship, which many of you will be Madrach in this summer. So there was nothing like that. It was more university students wanting to have their say on prevalent issues and prevalent discussions that were happening surrounding the idea of Zionism. And really, these students, there was nowhere else for them to go. Up until 1935, where all these small societies joined together and became one big group, one big federation called the Federation of Zionist Youth.
So the next frame we thought we'd use to look at FZY with the fantastic pun, FZY, and look
you
at...
You can see Harrison laughing at that in the corner.
I'm sure he loves it.
Thanks, Harrison.
And two quite important places to start are with our vision and with our mission. So on the screen in front of you, you can see FZY's vision statement is the Jewish people living in peace in the land of Israel as one people and as a light unto the nations. And FZY's mission statement is to inspire and educate all Jewish youth with whom FZY comes into contact to take part in the future of the Jewish people and its ultimate expression in the state of Israel. So they're kind of the two guiding principles, I guess, which help us with our programming, with what FZY choose to educate and to discuss and sort of bring to light when we look at all of our seminars and our aims as well.
For those of you who've been in the movement for quite a long time, you might be familiar with, well, might be less familiar with the vision and mission statements. And it's really interesting to see how we can build this into our programming. So when you're writing programs or speaking to your chanechim, a really, really good place to start is what do we want to achieve? And our vision statement, if you break that down, it can bring about some really interesting conversations. The Jewish people, what does that mean? Who are the Jewish people? Living in peace in the land of Israel. So what's the border? What's the lands of Israel look like? How do we see the lands of Israel? As one people, and as a light unto the nation. So the conversations that we can have there with our Chanachim are really interesting. And sorry, I just say, whoever's just joining, just go on mute. Sorry. So the conversations that we have surrounding them are really interesting, and definitely bring them over to your Chanachim and try and get them to understand, like, we're a youth movement, but what's our driving principles?
The next thing is probably the biggest one to look at. What is FZY offering? So we have this vision, this mission. These are kind of our guiding lights, I guess. And how do we do that, and what do we do it through? So there's a lovely table on the screen in front of you, which divides our programs into categories of age groups and whether it's yearly or summer programs. Now, depending on what you're leading in the summer, you probably feel like some of these programs might not be relevant, but we think it's important that you as Madrachim understand kind of the full FZY journey, and you're able to tell your Chanachim about where they can go after whatever program they're on. So for those of you leading camp this summer, it's important to know that after camp there's tour, and then after tour, for those of you leading tour, there's a range of programs for those in year 12 and 13. Some of them are yearly, and some of them are just in the summer. And it all kind of progresses sort of the older you get, and whether it's yearly or summer. So I guess you could say from year 7 to 11, there's a lot of focus on creating like a group identity. It's quite sociable. It's about learning about FZY in general. And then when you get a bit older, you tend to look at things through more of like a leadership perspective, how we can progress as individuals and things like that. And then when you get to Bogrim age, when you're at university or equivalent age, a lot of the things we look at are a bit more like a deep dive into educational topics, and that relates to like Wujis and being Madrachim as well.
And I think it's also really important when you're leading a program to understand where your program fits in, not just the journey, but also the educational journey for your Chanachim. And it's really one thing that we tend to build throughout the programs is a clear journey. So OFEC, if you look at what OFEC looks at, it's very much myself as a Jew in Britain. You look at Kesha UK, it's myself with Israeli Jews, it's myself with Israelis alongside, and see what the relationships there, the conversations that you can invoke there are. Then Kesha USA is the idea of Jewish diaspora, and working together with, working to understand what different Jewish communities around the world are like. Before going on Israel tour to actually see what it's like to be a Jew in Israel. And so on and so forth. And there's a clear journey. If anyone wants it, I very much recommend to have a look at the educational curriculum for the movement before leaving in the summer. And if you want that, you can absolutely feel free to get in touch, and we'll send that round. And just really understand where your program fits in and where you're kind of in, what part of their journey they're on.
One other thing that's quite important to mention is this little star at the bottom, which says the Young Zionist. And the Young Zionist is something that is edited by members of the movement. The editorship is voted on each year, and the responsibility has been with Abba Eban, who was the Israeli Defense Secretary, and Chaim Herzog, and Joel Landschaft,
who's with us now. We're honoured. So the Young Zionists, just to go a little bit on what Jesse's saying, it's a space for you. It's a space for your Chanachim to write about something you care about. So if at any point there is anything you care about, please feel free to get in touch with either Young Zionists at FZY.org.uk or directly with or whoever the editor in a given year is.
So we split the next question into two parts. So one, the aims and ideology. In a very simplistic way, FZY has 4 aims. Magen, which is defense, Tarbut, which is culture, Tzedakah, which is righteousness, and Aliyah Nimshechet, which is moving to Israel and actively contributing to Israeli society. And our 4 aims lead into the sort of pinnacles, I guess, of Judaism and Zionism within a pluralist framework. And those kind of guiding principles allow us to achieve our vision and mission as FZY and as a Jewish Zionist pluralist youth movement.
So pluralism is a really interesting conversation that we've discussed a lot, and we need to understand what it means to be pluralist. So a lot of the time we see pluralism as potentially a barrier to discussing different things and having different points of view, because we're pluralists we can't side with one thing, or because we're pluralists we can't hear from one perspective or only do one thing. And pluralism needs to be maybe reframed or rediscussed with your chanachim. Like, what's it mean to be pluralist? Does it stop us from achieving our aims? Does it stop us from achieving our vision? Or can we use it as a nice little way that we like to refer to pluralism is it allows us to invite, educate, understand, and celebrate the differences and the similarities between all of us. And those 4 words are a nice way to sort of frame your activities, frame your pulot when you're writing them, and also frame, a Shabbat. Why are we doing things? So the words are invite, educate, understand, and celebrate the similarities and differences that make us Jewish and make us Zionists. The hope is then that these the aims will help us achieve our ideology, and our ideology will ultimately help us achieve our vision statement and our mission statement.
The second way we thought we'd look at how is through our community partnerships. And I guess one of the benefits of being pluralist is that we can engage with a lot of ideological educational partners. And there were almost too many to kind of list all of them, but we pulled out a few that we thought particularly important. The first one is the Atid partnership, which is a 3-way partnership with the Israeli Scouts, the Sofim, Young Judea, which is the American branch, and FZY, which is us. And the Atid partnership is somewhere we can kind of combine all of our programming, and we work together with them on a number of programs. Most notably, I guess, is Keshe USA and TY, on Israel Tour, and on Year Course.
We've also got FFZY, so the Friends of FZY. This is, you might have seen quite a bit of talk around the Friends recently. They're a trustee board, and they've been in place for probably around 30 or so years. We'll get to that in a bit. But their main role is to support us as a movement and support our participants financially. And recently we've been doing a lot of work in rebranding, redeveloping what it is that the Friends do and how they do it. And so you might have seen like posts over Facebook and posts all over. But that's something that we really hope our members, especially you as our madrachim, as you get older and graduate through the movement, that is something that we really hope that you get involved in due course. And the final one as well written down is the ZYC, the Zionist Youth Council. So the Zionist Youth Council is made up of 7 Zionist youth movements in the UK. And all the movements have different ideologies and different roles and different values, but the overriding theme of them all is they're Jewish Zionist youth movements.
Joe and Jesse, can I just butt in for 1 sec?
Sure.
Not on the content. I just realised I've been kind of getting messages from, because they don't want to disturb you, of people who haven't been able to join. So now it looks like there's 27, 28 people here, which is fantastic. And I just wanted to restate one of the things you said at the beginning, which is basically this is a great way for all of our madrachim for different programs, lots of educators to be brought up to date with who we are, what we do. And if you missed the bit at the beginning, we'll send that out to people who are here at the end so they can catch up. And lastly, you should see you can put your thing on mute. That helps, and you can turn your video off if you want. Please do feel free to ask questions and butt in. And you'll see in the top left, like I said before, it's recording just so that we'll be able to send it around to you after. So I just wanted to go over those things again, but I'll go off now.
No, thank you. Thank you. Cool.
So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to go through it relatively quickly because there's a lot of information and we don't want to kind of bombard you with too much. But we thought we'd look at sort of when FZY has had big achievements over the last 100 years or so. And there's quite a lot packed into this timeline that we're going to go through. And it's not necessarily important that you remember everything. We certainly don't expect you to remember everything, but we think it's quite nice if when you're educating your Khanachim, you're able to pull out a few key parts of the past and make them feel like part of something bigger than just a 4-week trip to Israel or a 2-week stay on camp. So the first one, as we said before, is in 1910, FZY was formed, and it was mainly formed of like provincial groups. And it wasn't until 1935 when the name FZY, Federation of Zionist Youth, was coined. And that was also the year that Abba Eban took over as editor of the Young Zionists. And Chaim Herzog was an active member of FZY at the time too.
So in 1950, Avraham Eisenstadt was our first shliach. He came over and introduced the idea of Shnat Sharut. So that's where Shnat Sharut was where the gap year program came from back in 1950. And then in 1964 and 65, fundraising projects in Israel were started, and initial projects such as building a kindergarten or a library in Eilat were initiated by FZY.
But it wasn't until 1967, kind of following the aftermath of the Six-Day War, that FZY really got involved with fundraising and volunteering, and over 50 active members volunteered on kibbutzim at a time when the movement had members like numbering nearly 2,500. And then in 1970, kind of following on with this trend of fundraising, the Friends of FZY was initially set up.
In 1973, following the Yom Kippur War, we also sent some members out to help volunteer on a kibbutz. And in 1976, we started discussions with Young Judea to build a partnership and to work with them.
In 1979 is when the Friends of FZY was properly re-established to provide financial support for a lot of FZY programs. And in 1982, FZY members participated in a march held for solidarity with Soviet Jewry in Hyde Park, and FZY members were really influential with the Refusnik issue.
So that was the Refusnik campaign was one of the first big campaigns that we did and we took part in globally, and really did have a massive impact on that. And then in 1990, following FZY's 80th anniversary, which was celebrated via a live link up between Tel Aviv and London. So two big communities of FZY Olim, FZY members who'd made Aliyah, and those that were still involved in the movement in the UK. In 1991, despite the Gulf War, FZY had 25 year course Khanachim, and we took out an Israel tour despite the war going on. And this is where the idea of the classical Madrech Chanech relationship, Hadracha, started. So this really, 1991, is when the idea of not really just being university students, not really just being about campaigning, but also about Hadracha started within the movement. This is also the year that we had our first mazkir. So the movement went from being very much run by students. Before this, we only had a mazkirat. The mazkirat was made up of students, university students, and they volunteered. They met every so often and they decided which direction the movement would go. They'd be voted in. But it wasn't until 1991 when we had the first mazkir who drove the direction of the movement, and the world became much more professional.
1992, year course participants set up the Barzilai Hospital Radio Project in Ashkelon. And in 1993, Kesha Summer Camp was launched in the UK for year 9s, for 14 and 15-year-olds. And it's also the year when pluralism became a really central part of FZY's ideologies. So it was quite a big year in terms of like program structure and also the movement principles itself.
In 1994, we sent 44 people on year course. So we were keeping our numbers. We were growing and growing. And we also inaugurated with JNF a forest, the FZY forest at Mount Heres, which is near Shah Haggai, on the way to Jerusalem, on the approach to Jerusalem. So there is an FZY forest in Israel, which I think is pretty cool.
In 1995, numbers on Israel programs reached kind of an all-time high up until this point. There were 41 on year course, there was 240 on Israel tour, and there were 95 sign-ups for Kesher, which is the summer camp. There were also 3 movement workers, and FZY also took its first steps to becoming a part of the International Zionist Youth Confederation, alongside Young Judea and the Sofim. And then in 1996 to 97 is when the Atid partnership was fully formed between FZY, Young Judea and the Scouts, and it allowed FZY activities to kind of be a nice mix of all 3 movements.
So between 1998 and 2000, this is when camp was getting so big, Kesher was getting so big that it had to be divided into 2. And this is the first time we saw the name Ofek come about. Ofek was the year 9 camp, and Kesher was the year 10 camp at this point. And then in 2006 to 2008, we not only alongside Ofek and Kesher, and despite it being the second in Lebanon war, we took 12 Israel tours that summer, and we were the only youth movement in the UK, possibly the world, to do so. My sources say the world, but I've been told that seems a little bit drastic. But our numbers were they were huge. We had 124 participants on year course, so this was the highest, only to be beaten a few years later by 3. But 124 people on year course. Ofek and Kesher together had nearly 300 participants, and Israel Tour, having taken 12 tours out, surpassed the 500 mark.
Between 2008 and 2011, FZY took a real stand against Gilad Shalit's captivity and became really instrumental in raising awareness. Some notable things were year courses standing in Tel Aviv in silence with signs and embracing the feeling that Gilad is still alive. And in 2016, FZY kind of aimed to really reinvigorate the post-tour age group with new programs, and launched 2 programs to run alongside the classic Hadracha course, the 16 to 18-year-olds. One is the Dilatin Fellows, and one is Netina, the Ghana trip.
So at this point, we're now getting very much into the present and the near past, I guess. And it now might be a time where, if you're leading a program this summer, to think where's the journey you're kind of going to take? Where's the journey you might take? And as Jesse mentioned, when we launched Dilla and Netina, the Ghana program, we're still running those programs. They're for post-tour year, and we are very much relying on you as our madrachim, as people who've been on those programs and led those programs, to see the value in them. And if you it's a Veda every year we discuss whether our programs are helping us really achieve our aims and our vision. And it's a great conversation to have, and we will all love to have that conversation with all of you. And we did have that conversation a lot over Veda, but understand that the programs that we're saying now and the programs that we've got are hopefully the next stage in your kind of things journey. So in 2017, 2018, bearing in mind that numbers over the last few years dwindled a bit for Ofek and Kesher, resulting in us only offering Kesher for year 9 and 10. So going back to merging year 9 and 10, we decided to launch Ofek again, but this time for year 7 and 8. So there'd been a lot of conversation throughout the movement in the past few years about going younger. And at this point, we decided to do this. And we had our first ever Ofek year 7 and 8, and Kesher carried on for year 9 and 10. As well as this, we decided to reinvigorate Bog-Rim activities and not only carry on with the Live Not program that so many of you are or will be or have been involved in, but also change our Bog-Rim seminar, which has been happening for over 30, 40 years, and make it more exciting by going to Europe. So that was the first year we did that. And then in 2018, we launched a campaign called Paint Over Prejudice. So this was just a campaign in the long line of campaigns that we'd had before, bearing in mind, having helped out after the Six Day War, the Yom Kippur War, and Gilad Shalit, various other things we've done throughout the history. Paint Over Prejudice was just the next campaign that we did. And we took a group of our, some of you, our sixth form students at the time, to Berlin. They helped us to repaint over anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist graffiti at the East Side Gallery in Berlin.
So in 2019, a few things have happened already, and a few things are going to be happening hopefully in the summer as well. So following the success of OFEC last year, we are having our year 7 to 8 camp again this year. And we are also launching Kesha USA, which is a camp option for year 10s. And it's with our partners at Young Judea. They'll be going to spend camp at TY, which is the camp in America that a lot of our leaders also spend time on. Some of you have or will be doing so this summer. We're also having another campaign this year for our current year 12s and 13s, and it's called You Connect with a K. And we're going to Ukraine. We were approached by a community out there to help them rebuild their community vibe and a shul that was taken from them a few times throughout history and then eventually given back to the Jews in Ukraine. So we are starting, I think this week, we're just starting to look at sort of fundraising and plan the trip to go to Ukraine and actively get involved as well.
Yeah, so at this point, I just want to sort of reiterate what Jessie said. There was crazy amount of information there. It's 109-year history, and we're not expecting any of you or any of us to know that off by heart. Even us, we just read it a little bit. We kind of learned it, but we've had to look it up. There's no way your Chanukah need to know all that stuff. But what it is important is to make your Chanukah feel like they're part of something bigger. Jessie said that you're going to be leading these Chanukah on a 2, 3, 4 week experience, which is amazing. But we want them to realize that there's so much more than that, and they really have the opportunity to get involved and make a real tangible difference to both the British Jewish community and also the Israeli community, Israeli Jewish community and diaspora Jewish community. Campaigns and members of the movement have been so successful in whatever avenue they've taken, whichever direction they went in. And you lot, our Madrachim and your Chanukah are hopefully the future of that and one in the line of succession of this success. So with that being said, I just want to, just open it up now before we sort of wrap up. If anyone's got any questions, if anyone's got anything they want to say, to know a little bit more how you can use this information, we've got a bit of conversation now, I guess. Rule number 1 of Chadracha, don't be afraid of silence. Got a few people joining us as well. Cool. So was someone trying to speak? Is that what unmute yourself if you want to speak. Okay, cool. At any point, if anyone's got any conversations they want to have or questions they want to ask, feel free to let us know.
I think something else that's really important to say is we wanted to do these webinars. It's like a course. This is the first of a few because we feel like it's important that we are able to give you some base knowledge, but this is by no means the be-all and end-all of everything you're capable of teaching your Chanukah over the summer and indeed over the years that you're with FZY. And often it can feel like when you're on a summer program that there's so much else going on, welfare and medical and general moving about, particularly on tour, getting from one place to the next, that it's really hard to find time to do meaningful hadracha. And if you have a little bit of base knowledge, if you know that at some point FZY helped out with the Gilad Shalit campaign, it can be a little bit easier, a little bit smoother to just kind of build that into your own summer schedule. But again, like, this is by no means everything you should teach. We know that a lot of you have your own individual passions, which are also really great to pass on to your chanechem. But again, we are all always here. I think Josh has unmuted himself. I feel like you want to say something.
Of course he does. Go on, Josh.
Well, wait, is it now an okay time? Are we like wrapping up?
Yeah, go on.
So what I wanted to say a little bit was this. Like Jesse said, this is something new that we're trying. We're very much into informal education, and everyone's right and everyone has an opinion. We really want you to go out in the world and go out on camp and on tour and educate on the things that you're passionate about. So if that's the environment, then great, it's the environment. If it's social issues, great, it's social issues. And we just think the only thing that's important is we give you some of the like cold hard facts about some of the things that the movement, and I don't mean us, the movement team, but I mean like the actual people who make up the movement, that they care about. So that's why we wanted to start off with this.
Oh, Josh, on mute. Carry on. Can't hear you, Josh.
Really?
You're just covering something. You're covering the mic.
Oh, hi.
That's better.
So yeah, I was just saying that some of you in particular, as tour madrichim, who maybe haven't had the last few years in the movement, maybe some of you haven't had those experiences, and so that's why we want to just bring everyone up to date. Like Joe said, we'll be sending this around afterwards, just so that everyone knows the other stuff that we think is like important in a similar way is all about understanding Zionism, understanding like life in Israel today, and understanding the conflict. They're the three big ones. I think the Zionism one is actually next week on Wednesday the 3rd. Yeah. And definitely it will be slightly different than this. It'll be, I mean, it's going to be the same format, everyone trying to find a link at 7 o'clock or something like that. But we're just going to try and guide you through what we think, you know, like every FZY madrich or madricha should know about Zionism. That'll be the first half. And then just so you know, the second half, we're going to look at, I'm going to hopefully give you different models for talking about Zionism with young people, different ways of understanding it with young people. So I just wanted to say that I was literally just giving my pitch for next week. It would be good to have you back. Different kind of stuff. It's less about us at FZY, and it's more about like an educational framework, or it's more about a topic because it's important to us. And one of the things that's good about the timing of this, it would be great to have a lot of this content out the way when we get to summer, so you can really focus not on what you know or what you don't know, but on actually how you can put that into action in like a really fun, educational, but like creative, exciting new way with loads of young people, and just like continue to inspire them, I guess. So
cool. And just to wrap up then, this is all going to be, this all has been recorded. We're going to be showing this along with the next 3 lectures, whatever you want to call them. We're not calling them lectures, whatever they are.